So moving on to the last topic for the day, which is immunologically high risk transplantation. I would request Dr. Padmanabhan, sir, and Dr. Sundar, sir, to be the moderators and introduce our speaker for this last topic, Dr. Vishwanath, sir.
I request Padmanabhan to do it. He's my good friend and colleague. I think he will handle the show well. Padmanabhan, sir, please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. You're all able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
You're able to hear me?
Yes, sir. We are able to hear you.
Yeah. So good evening. I think he's the night watchman probably. Vishwanath is a very good friend of mine, a young and dynamic nephrologist. I think he did his nephrology training from Manipal, and I think he was the gold medalist. Am I right, Vishwanath?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
So he was a gold medalist in DNB nephrology.
He's got a Chennai connection also, but
okay. Oh, sir.
he was trained with Nammalwar. He was trained with Nammalwar also.
I was a Nammalwar student. Yes, sir.
Student, yeah. So pediatric background plus nephrology. I think we would be delighted to hear from him. He's very lucid in his talks. I have been hearing him speak very frequently and very lucid presentation. I think we should just go over to him and ask him to deliver his talk on immunologically high-risk transplants.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Sanjay, I would like to thank MCure and Sanjay Srinivas for giving me this opportunity. Only problem I have is I'm between best speakers till now and then between your dinner. So I'll try to be brief and quick in going through, though the topic is a little difficult topic, immunological risk. I would like to cover the topic in the following headings. Basically, what do you mean by high risk, and a few case scenarios I'll discuss and directly go to discussion. High risk transplants are always challenging. Most of the times we come across multiple risk factors, be it a repeat transplant, previous pregnancies, multiple transfusions, or high PRAs. We always need to assess pre-transplant any patient coming in a stepwise manner, and we should also have a high index of suspicion. If anyone has a high risk factor, then we should probably do more workup rather than going forward and burning our fingers. So recipient sensitization to HLA is a critical problem. Highly sensitized patients express non-self HLA antibodies, and they remain on the wait list for a long time. We do have people who keep coming back again and again for their cross match. They are found to be positive. They don't get a cadaver donor. Also, it has shown poor graft survival due to high incidence of acute and chronic rejections. If you look at immunological risk, that is what my topic is. Basically, it is seen in people with previous graft loss, retransplants, multiple transfusions. In fact, KDIGO says any PRA positivity is a high risk. In general, people accept of CPRA of more than 30%. And of course, any previous episodes of ABMR and graft loss is again a high risk of developing immunological high risk transplant. If you look at the paper in Transplantation European Society, where they define based on induction high risk. Basically, my topic today is only immunological risk. So I will concentrate on high PRA and presence of donor-specific antibodies and little bit about HLA mismatch. KDIGO recent update. This is the immunological assessment. I am sure all of you can access this. It was published in April 2020, freely available. And how to assess and how we go about testing them, including antibodies and PRA and donor-specific antibodies. These are the various antibody testing. I am sure all of you know. The basic criteria would be a complement-dependent cytotoxic test, CDC cross-match, what we call, should be negative before going for a transplant. A CDC positive cross-match is a preclude for going for a transplant. And of course, depending on the risk, we need to assess them with the help of any of these solid phase assays, be it ELISA or a flow cytometry and a Luminex, depending on the risk. These are the methodology of doing. I'm sure all of you know, and we should probably know more about Luminex, which is available in our city. Ankit, I'm sure all of you know, he has been helping us in doing. In any high risk, when we do routine cross match, and if we have any high risk strategies, then we do a simple DSA lysate, what they call. Any of these showing positivity, then we go for Luminex because it is expensive. Impact of cross match, as you can see here, a compatible one has the best cross match ability, and if it is negative, has the best survival. As the flow cross match and higher flows are positive, the graft survival comes down because ABMR increases. So what is the problem here? Basically, the problem is the immunoglobulin IgG, be it because of pregnancy, be it because of multiple transfusion, and then the kidney is confused here whether to take it or not. So this is the induction which is recommended by KDIGO. As of now, most of, if you look at induction, all of them should receive some or the other biological agent. World over, more than 90% of them receive induction. If you look at overall early immunosuppression options in these risks, depending on the high risk, we need to choose what immunosuppression we take, either plasmapheresis and rituximab in high risk or a simple transplant if there is low risk. Coming to few cases, one is this is the 46-year-old gentleman who had a second transplant in October 2016. He had first transplant in 2010, mother being donor, had a routine transplant without induction because mother was the donor. And then after 4 years, developed a chronic AMR, which was DSA positive, both class 1, class 2. Because it was almost more than 4 years, we didn't offer plasmapheresis. He received rituximab, went on for another 2 years and developed ESRD. And then he wanted to have a transplant donor being his brother. Brother fortunately had a 6 antigen match. There was no mismatch at all. DSA showed initially lysate method was positive. If you look at only this DSA positivity, we would have probably refused the donor. But we went ahead and did single antigen, which had just started. And then single antigen showed no anti-HLA antibodies at all. So he had routine second transplant. Since it was a second transplant, we gave ATG induction and standard triple immunosuppression. It is almost 4.5 years now. His creatinine has been normal and repeat DSAs have been negative. In fact, we have stopped doing DSAs. This is again to stratify the risk factors depending on not only the age, what is the DSA, whether the MFI of more than 500. Many people have many cutoffs. Most of them consider any MFI of more than 500 a high risk for rejection. So how did the cross match and other techniques develop? First, to start with, it was a simple CDC. Then we have the flow cytometry, which is available in most of the centers, and then came DSA Luminex, which is available in major cities and expensive. So if you look at flow cross match, as shown in these studies, flow cross match also, if it is T cell flow positivity, it has increased risk of rejection, but definitely flow cross match has its own fallacies. As shown by this study, the rate of rejection was almost similar in both, except in few patients. And then we had our own data where we saw that we did flow cross match, we did DSA, but nothing was correlating. We did that in almost more than 25 patients, and it was not correlating. It was part of thesis of one of our colleague, Dr. Rashmi. I will skip through this, not needed. This is the risk assessment, which is available in most of the studies. If it is current CDC positive, current AHG and flow cross match positive, the risk is higher. If the current CDC and flow are negative, AHG negative, the risk is negligible. There are a lot of pitfalls in cytometry. As I said, it is too sensitive and probably unnecessarily deny a patient from getting into transplant. PRA, most of us know we should always screen, but one fallacy of PRA is again whether we can really assess them and whether whatever the PRA available, does it represent the current donors available? Because the PRA kits, whatever come is from the outside India. The whatever PRA we are doing, is it representative of the current donors available or donor pool available? That's the fallacy of PRA. And historically, PRA has been very non-specific with respect to antigen. These are various methods of estimating the antibodies. first to start with CDC and then flow and then probably ELISA method of DSA and then next go to the Luminex method. So this is again risk assessment. If antibody is negative, cross-match negative, the safest one. If antibody positive, cross-match positive, the highest risk. These are various protocols. I don't think I'll go details of this on a Saturday evening because most of you are probably waiting for your beer next. So this is to show that whenever you have a compatible transplant, the survival is better, graft loss is lesser. Whenever you have a positive cross-match, the loss of graft is higher. This is case 2 where a 45-year-old policeman came for a transplant. His father was a prospective donor, little elderly, maybe around 68. He had 3 antigen match. CDC cross match was negative. DSA lysate method about 2 days before transplant repeated one came as positive. The first DSA was negative. When we ran the DSA MFI, it was 5,700 class 1. We were all scared. Then I had to request Ankit to run a urgent single bead assay, which was negative for our relief. We went ahead with the transplant because this was almost 2018. We were a little smarter then. We gave rituximab with ATG induction. Rituximab single dose 500 milligram. It's almost 2.5 years he has done well. If we have not done a single antigen bead assay, gone by only DSA lysate, we would have probably refused this donor. But he has done well now. So we should probably need to upgrade our testing methodology. This is again to show the DSA and poor outcome. And whenever Luminex is positive and negative flow cross match, the survival is probably better. This is again to show class 2 antibodies are bad to the graft. I won't go into the details of this. And approaches, all of you are familiar. There are various approaches depending on the unit you follow or whom your mentor or which area you are trained. All of them have their own drawbacks, and probably we should always look at acceptable mismatch, and after detailed antibody analysis, we can always accept the donor. And of course, probably we should also check with astrologer, as Dr. Sundar sir was mentioning. And I won't go into the case detail. This is again to highlight that whenever you don't have any anti-HLA antibodies, definitely you can take such donor, though there are general DSA available in the blood. These are various strategies. I won't go into this. Again, to show that we need to have detailed evaluation before we refuse. There are various desensitization protocols, but we should always choose whether they are suitable for our patient. If they are very fragile and if we have restricted living donors, we should always see whether it is suitable for them. Of course, the money is most important thing in our country. We should always see whether the toxicity of doing a desensitization program is good or not for our patient. It should not be like what happened in US. This is again to see whether we have validated patient history, sensitization, and always reconfirm and see whether the titers are graft harming or not. This is various protocol. I won't go into the details. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this. It's available in the net. And this is again to show that whenever people are on dialysis, they don't do well, whatever may be the age group. So if you can consider desensitization and consider the transplant, definitely survival is better. But definitely timing is very crucial in these transplants, especially in high-risk transplant. This is an example of one of my patients, second transplant, waiting for cadaver. Luckily, he came forward and had desensitization, received rituximab, and to my luck and his luck, he got a cadaver call, and Ankit did his Luminex virtual cross match. In fact, Ankit called me middle of the night saying, this is the best donor he can get, go ahead and transplant. He has a transplant now, almost 2 years, he has done well. This is again, the protocol is available and up to date. I won't go into the details of this. Future of the transplant, probably we can, if we can do away without immunosuppression, that will be the best probably. To summarize, desensitization of highly sensitized patients is possible, but we need to pick and choose who is suitable and what are the risks we are able to take and whether the patient is going to tolerate. We should not do more harm. Need to understand the pathogenesis of sensitization, and probably as Dr. Girish mentioned in his earlier talk, if we can consider them in a swap rather than doing desensitization, makes more sense. Thank you very much. There are a lot of newer things coming up. I would encourage our youngsters to go through. It is definitely a balancing equation between whether putting a graft across all the risks or not. Thank you very much. I'll end my talk here.
So do we have some questions for Vishwanath sir, or?
I think all of them are waiting for their tequila shot and beer.
Padmanabhan will be able to give some insight.
Yeah. No, it was a very nice presentation. Very difficult to present actually. It's very complex topic, and basically with the coming of swap transplants and a better success rates and a long-term survival of ABO incompatible, and using a little extended donor criteria, accepting an older age, I think they would all be much better than to desensitize somebody and then try and do a graft. And desensitization is probably good if they have a live donor at hand rather than doing a desensitization and waiting
yes.
For a cadaver. I'm sure there are so many things that are available. Yeah. But I think the first and foremost in our country is the money that is actually involved in plasmapheresis, IVIG, then rituximab. And then if it does not come down, then you'll have to use bortezomib and then do transplants. Yes. But there are situations where we have been successful, and there are equal number of patients in whom we did everything, and then you still find that your MFI is 5,000 or 6,000. And if somebody is willing to accept that cost and the 50-50 chance that it will work, then I think it is good enough. But I think it is time that we actually reclassify the immunological risk. I think it can never be a standard immunological risk and a high immunological risk. It has to be a low immunological risk, moderate, and probably high. Yes. What we are doing, a haploidentical match, actually we should probably talk in terms of a 3-antigen mismatch rather than a 3-antigen match, and take it as a moderate risk. And probably that is why we are accepting to give induction therapy for people. Because if it were to be a no immunological risk, if you have a 6-antigen match and say that I will not give immunosuppression, I will not give induction, I don't think it will work, because we have seen rejections even in identical twins. They need probably very minimal amount of immunosuppression. But then this is going to be more relevant for us, because I think more and more people nowadays are coming forward for a second and a third transplant. Yeah. And I mean, we should be geared up in all these things. So luckily we have Luminex and other assay single antigen bead, which will surely help us. And we have a lot of these things which are good. I think, I mean, it will have its own role in transplantation. We cannot say we will not do it and brush it out.
Vishwanath sir, I have one question.
Yes, Deep.
If a single antigen test we do and we find, suppose, is there any specific cutoff, like you have out of 6, you have 2 antibodies against the HL antigens, or 3 or 4, we should, I mean, if 3 or less, we can go ahead and do desensitization, or 3 or more, we should not, something like that. Is there any cutoff like that?
I don't think there is a single point. Dr. Anil, I would request his help to answer this. Only thing what I feel is there is one what is called as RSI index. It's available in the up-to-date if you want. They give number for all the MFIs. For each MFI, they give, if it is more than 5,005 marks, more than 2,002, and more than 501, something like that. So put together, if it is more than 15, they feel the risk of rejections are much, much higher. But basically, if, as Padmanabhan mentioned, if you have a live donor, if you are looking at specifically anti-HLA antibodies, the more number of MFIs we have, definitely the risk is higher. Various places have different cutoffs. Most of them take anything more than 2,000 as high risk nowadays, people are even taking more than 500. But in general, if you talk to TTK, less than 2000, they don't even report it is positive.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Anil. Yeah.
Yeah. So for Deepak's question, if you have say out of the 6 antigens, if you have a DS against one antigen more than 5,000, so you may able to desensitize. But you have for 2 or more,
it may be more difficult to desensitize. Yes.
Not worth going into.
We had one patient who came from Nigeria. She didn't have she had anti-HLA antibodies, but she also had MICA antibodies. We were not checking MICA. Nobody checks now. In fact, they were checking in UK. So they got that and came here for desensitization. One of my colleagues was treating. They did complete desensitization, almost I think 10 plasmapheresis, 2 rituximab. After that, also it was disheartening that before transplant, the titers were MFI was more than 10,000. Probably MICA also was contributing because of MICA presence, and then other antibodies we are not able to remove. We had to refuse. She was very, very upset, but we couldn't do anything because we didn't want to take chance. We said this is not the case to do. So we refused to do transplant. So sometimes we also get disheartened by that, but maybe better not to. In fact, as the period goes, we should probably consider more of swap and in fact, ABO incompatible rather than doing the desensitization and doing transplant.
Yes, in our settings, in living donor transplants, desensitization somewhat will be easy compared to disease donor transplant. I think we had an experience, Dr. Padmanabhan sir may be knowing, this was one patient who had registered in 2014. He had several chances actually. Every time he used to go to for a cross match, he used to be positive. And the 14th time recently, he 3 months back, his report was negative. We did a single antigen bead. There were multiple antibodies. We were very happy, and I did not think twice and just went ahead with the transplant. So very third day, then second day, I sent a single antigen bead again, thinking that something may be wrong. There were several antibodies, and I did a biopsy. It was severe rejection. Third day. So DSA lysate method, what we have to always, I should have probably cross-checked with the CDC cross-match or a flow cross-match. I shouldn't have gone ahead with that transplant because there are a lot of fallacies, whatever is our existing method, what we have.
Cadaver method,
yeah, cadaver allocation based on DSA lysate. So I think desensitization, at least in our disease donor program, I think it is very risky. Probably in living donor transplant, we can consider. And as long as we have single donor antigen, which is more than 5,000, probably we can. But venturing into this thing, so we can be successful in the immediate post-transplant period. But these are the patients who will develop transplant glomerulopathy probably after 6 months.
AFMR. And Tanabe was talking other day. In fact, I believe they keep giving IVIG huge doses, 4 gram per kg, and then they keep giving every 6 months. But I think in our country it is not practically possible because of cost.
And what are these IVIG? How much they contain antibodies? Is there really?
Very difficult.
Very difficult.
I just had 2. I mean, they were all Maldivians, so the money was not an issue, with an MFI of 20,000.
Oh.
And then in one, it just came down to 700. And I transplanted that lady. And that was the second transplant. She had graft intolerance. We had to do a graft nephrectomy. Then she developed all this DSA. Then we did desensitization. First, plasma exchange and IVIG and rituximab, she did not respond. Then I gave bortezomib and another 2 more sessions. It came down to around 700, if I remember right. And then we successfully transplanted her. She came last week for a follow-up 3 years. And creatinine is 0.9. She's doing well. Almost at the same time, another lady, multiple pregnancies, and around 16,000 was the MFIs, both class 1 and class 2. And we did 8 sessions of plasmapheresis, then IVIG, rituximab, then bortezomib. But it never came down. It just came down to around 7,000. So I said it is not worth it and sent them back, because these are all very, very difficult. It's double-edged. If we are lucky, then we sail through. If not,
if a sensitized patient goes to Anil, I'll be happy. That's what Sundar sir says. Sundar sir says, if your patient goes to somebody else, we should be happy because God has something kept for you.
Yeah, I think if there are no more questions, I think we should thank Dr. Vishwanath for his
Thank you, Vishwanath. Very
good
excellent.
presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So,
Sanjay, you can close, being the convener.
so thank you very much, sir.